Aloha and welcome to ThinkTech Hawaii. It's reaching out. My name is Neez Faleafine. I'm your host, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you for tuning in. Our guests today are amazing co-founders of a tool that I just experienced this past Sunday, and something I think that needs to be explored and discussed. And we're going to be talking about the power of real-time data. My guests today are first Dr. Alex Burgo. I wanted to point out all of his degrees because I think it's very fascinating too, and he can contribute a lot to the conversation. He's the CEO and co-founder of LiveSift.com. He has a PhD in communications and information systems from the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and he has an MBA and an MS in information systems from Hawaii Pacific University, an MS in logic and computing from the University of Amsterdam. And so the very smart, please welcome very smart Dr. Alex Burgo. And next to him is another doctor, Dr. Viil Lid. And I met her years ago at a tweet up. We'll discuss that on another show, exactly what that is. She's the CTO and co-founder of LiveSift, also has a PhD in communication and information systems from UH Manoa, and an MS in information sciences from the University of Bergen.
Yeah.
And one thing that I found fascinating about her and doing my research, and something I connect with, and I know that it's going to make for a fascinating conversation today, is that professionally her interest is at the intersection of technology and people. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you
for having us.
I wanted to talk about, so it's about real-time data, and when I was experiencing your tool, before we get into the wonderful features and how it's going to really change the way we engage, I want to talk about the power of feedback and just how humans interact with any type of feedback, whether it's business, personal, or in leadership.
So I think for us, the idea is more that people like to be heard. Everybody wants to contribute, and I think the most important part is to feel that you're part of something. And I think that's what we're trying to facilitate with LiveSift.
That's a great point, that people want to be heard and they want to be part of something. One study that I heard of is the need to belong, right? It sounds like such a simple study, except people want to belong somewhere, and technology allows them to connect in and belong in a space on their own terms, which is wonderful. Let's talk about the history of feedback. I mean, we know that it's important. It provides insight into what your customers are thinking, what your employees are thinking, and it also gives you insight into your leadership, your business. Except back in the day, it was, we were just talking about this, before the show, that in order to get a piece of feedback, you had to make sure people filled out a survey or an employee evaluation, and then that evolved into a 1-800 number, right? Let's talk about that a little bit and how it started out.
Yeah, I think traditionally those are some of the ways that people in organizations and companies have solicited feedback from their employees and members. And there are certain obstacles to that technology is now helping out with. Some of it is that it's cumbersome. If you do it paper-based, you have to gather it, and you have to do a whole process of kind of aggregating it and figure out what's the overall feedback. The other side of it is that it's easy to recognize who the feedback is coming from if you do it, verbally, or write a note or an email or whatever. It's connected to your name, so that can sometimes bias the feedback, so that you don't get honest feedback that might be really helpful to the organization to move forward. And that's particularly negative feedback. Might be for political reasons. People might be scared of it affecting their position in the organization, or what people might think about them if they're the ones to voice the negative side, or point out the difficult part, or even ask questions that might feel stupid to them, but a lot of people are actually wondering about, but nobody dares to ask because they're worried about being labeled as ignorant.
Right, and it comes back to what Alex was saying about we want to belong someplace and we want to be involved in it, yet I don't want to be the one that, really stirs the pot too much, and I don't want to be the one that pulls the brake, except I do have a question, right? And how do I ask that question without any repercussions, even if it's just imagined?
Right. I think in organizations, in some organizations, there are penalties that comes from being honest, completely honest. And I think when people fill out surveys and they don't feel completely secure that's not going to come back to them personally, I think you'd have less of a chance of getting real, honest feedback.
And let's just jump from just the analog feedback, and I mean analog, even if using the telephone or emailing a survey link. And let's jump right into the way to give feedback using social networks and media publishing tools. There's a lot of noise out there. A lot of noise. There's a lot of shift in human behavior. We were talking about this, right? The courage to voice one's opinion through the internet versus in person. Have you folks seen this in your?
Yeah, I think in terms of noise, there are a lot of different types of noise. You can have just people using the channels on the social media to sort of provide information about things that really isn't relevant to that tag, as it were. But there are also disinformation and misinformation. People may be just saying stuff to see if they could stir the pot, and that comes often. It might confuse the truth, which is really what some of the ideas in social media should be about, I think.
Viil?
Well, I think that's a good point. I think also in social media, because of it being personalized and customized to each individual, we perceive it as different things in different groups, different contexts. So an example is Twitter. To me, Twitter is somewhat colored by who I'm following, which in my case tends to be academics within my field and people who are working in social media and some opinion leaders and researchers in that area. And then that kind of becomes how I perceive Twitter. Well, for somebody else, it might be all about celebrities or all about food or football, whatever they're into. So we might think we're talking about the same channel when we're talking about Twitter, but we really aren't, because we're using it differently and we're perceiving it differently. So then you can see how somebody's lunch tweet might be perceived as noise in somebody else's kind of academic discourse.
Yeah, for me, I was just having a conversation with someone else, like all these pictures of food. I said what other people see is noise. As for someone like me, I see data, right? I see, are people eating out more? Where are they eating, right? I see marketing data, right? That's insights for better strategies, and I know that that's what LiveSift is kind of focusing on for businesses, individuals, and organizations. Let's talk more about the way that we communicate and give each other feedback, and just kind of that shift in human behavior. There was a study that came out from the New York Times, and it listed different personalities, and they have one category that they say is like 90+% of internet users, and this is called the selectives, right? The selectives, or the looser term is called the lurkers, right? They're on there, they're reading everything, consuming everything, they won't say one word. How do we reach them, and how do we know we're there?
Well, this actually applies to some of my research. Actually, I think in my doctorate research, I was studying different roles in online social networks, and one of them is lurker, and it's a big one. It's like where the majority is, and we actually are reaching them because they are consuming what's being posted there. So the question is more, how do we engage them? How do we involve them? And we do it with, to some extent, it can be do with really, really easy small steps, like the like button.
Yes.
They might never express their opinion in words or spend the time, or but they might like or dislike something. And it might be just that they haven't come across a topic that their heart is beating hard enough for them to actually get involved. It might be their personality types, that they're somewhat introverts and don't really want to draw attention to themselves or their opinion, even if all of us have opinions, right? Or it might be a fear of being recognized and a need for being anonymous and not feeling completely sure that in that context they are anonymous.
I had a friend of mine who came to every speech I did in my training classes for 1 year. He had an account on Facebook, and he never filled out anything, and he never said anything. And finally he did after about a year, and I asked him, what was the difference? And he said he began trusting, right? He had control over who was in his little community or virtual community, and he just began trusting the content that was being published. Have you folks seen that in your research?
Sure, but both in research, I think, and also, for my research is basically on expert collaboration and forecasting, and one of the tenets of that methodology is trust. If people don't trust the system, that they can be anonymous, they won't contribute freely. I also seen it from personal life, where I contribute on different forums with, I guess, different personalities. I'm not very hard to track down, but I mean, for me, it's when people ask me why I write out, and somebody's gonna go over the top back on me, and I don't care enough. If people get personal, I just stop responding. It's like, well, that's his thing. I don't care. I want to learn, and I think engaging in conversation is the way to do that. So
I mean, it's when we talk about technology and people, it still comes down to the same thing, right? It's relationships, right? And we're just using different forms to actually get our thoughts across to one another. I wanted to talk about a little bit about how do you folks think businesses, with all the channels out there, is LiveSift solving the problem of the noise, if they describe it that way, or just the multiple ways for people to bring information or give feedback?
Well, I think one of the things that we're bringing to businesses is some of this power of giving feedback through technology and through a social media-ish kind of system, while at the same time being in a private context. So you could set up a LiveSift for one meeting for your company, and you won't have people like on Twitter. If you use Twitter for feedback in a meeting, other people could crash the party, so to speak, to a bigger degree. Likewise, all the contributions that are in that kind of, how can I say that, private situation to some extent, doesn't go beyond that. So if you're using, again, the example, if you're using Twitter at a conference or something like that, it will also go out and be a part of your identity outside the context of the conference. And some of your tweets might seem kind of weird in that sense. That's like, yeah, I don't agree. And then you're like, okay, what? The hashtag.
Right.
So it does provide kind of a certain level of privacy, and that isn't always only just about security privacy, but it's also about contextual, that it's clear what the context is, and it's not ambiguous as it could be if you're trying to tweak your Twitter to work in that context as well.
Right, and it's just so difficult to follow the conversation and make sense of it, right? When you're just throwing it out there. It's like standing in the grocery line and just blurting something out, right? The people around you are like, what are you talking about? That's what Twitter has become. What I really liked what you just said was that your tool, shifts the power to the organizer, who is bringing the group together, and the collaboration, like Alex was just talking about. And for me, when it comes to social media, I have these 4 C's, and my first C is communication, right? One to many, many to one. The tools are just an amazing way for people to communicate with one another. And the second is collaboration, right? And collaboration is the scariest part, because as an organization, as an individual, you're opening yourself up, you're being vulnerable, and you're asking people, what do you think and how do you feel about me, right? And that's where in my experience, I've seen governments, organizations, leaders just kind of shut down and become very, very cautious, except, as we discussed before, that's where that power of social media lies. That's where the world changes, right, in that collaboration. So
I think it's also one of the things that we bring to the table is the ability to not only focus on person itself, but also message. What are we talking about in the room? I think there are several facets to it. First of all, I think the level of engagement needs to be high for the value to be high. So if you send out a survey after an event and you get a very low response, then what is the value of that? Even if it says super positive things, it might not be super valuable because only 2 to 4% actually responds. We see that pretty much everybody who's on the system responds if you take 2 minutes at the end of the event when we use it. And I also think that letting it be about the topic at hand, we've seen very little spam and very little, how to say, like about the person in a way. I'm not sure if that's how it's coming through, but.
Okay, we're going to go to a commercial right now, and when we come back, I want to explore that. I want to talk about getting to, instead of it being about the person, being about the topic, actually. And we'll return right after this message.
Aloha, my name is Daniel Luke, and this is my co-host, Ing. We'll be here every other Monday on New Media, The Bleeding Edge on ThinkTech, talking about the intersection of social media and the news. We'll cover technology, trends, and other fun stuff. Did I leave anything out?
Well, I'm here to keep you honest, so that's my job, to remind you of everything you've forgotten. and to challenge you at every point.
Excellent. My wife tells me that I'm wrong about quite a lot.
Aloha and welcome back. I'm talking with Alex and Viil Lid of LiveSift.com. And where we left off, I want to continue where Alex was talking about giving real-time feedback, not on the person in the front of the room, however, on the topic and the feeling and the feedback on the topic.
Right. So I think what I was alluding to was the event that we were being used at last weekend was one of the local politicians that wanted real feedback on the answers he was giving to certain topics. And the question that was brought out to the audience wasn't about the person as a politician, it was about the answer he gave. And that shifts a little bit focus from person to content. And I think it gives people the ability to influence the conversation, which is something that I kind of tend to like.
For me, I get that because oftentimes when you ask how I need feedback on my organization, the fear is I think they're going to talk about me, right? Whereas the solution or the solution that you folks are providing is asking the right question about the content that's being discussed versus, do you like the person's shirt, unless that's what they want to know, right? Unless that's what they want to know. So let's go into LiveSift.com. We touched upon it, and what I want to know is, what's the genesis? Like, what is the love story, and how did LiveSift come about?
I think you're going to get two slightly different answers from Alex and me, but I think that boils down to us having different backgrounds and experiences that both led us to this combined effort. So from my perspective, my background is collaborative systems and how people use technology and how people use technology in solving problems that, are things that were probably not possible without technology. So one example for LiveSift is that we can allow a whole room of literally hundreds of people ask questions to a speaker at the same time and collect pretty big amounts of really, really nice, concise, quality questions and a lot of buzz, as opposed to the traditional way where you either had a mic where somebody had to step up to the mic or pass it around or maybe write something on note cards, where it's limited to that kind of analog or, one at a time kind of input. So that's one way that technology is kind of boosting it up. Another thing that we do with LiveSift is polling and ranking, which polling, if you do raise of hands, it gets inaccurate.
Right.
There might be some people who don't want to admit.
Or my friend rose their hand, I'm going to raise my hand too.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. My friends didn't, I'm not going to raise my hand. Right,
and the larger number you have in the room, the harder it is to get a proper overview. Is that 70 versus 30, or is it 50-50 or whatever? Because sometimes all the yeses might be in the front and all the no's might be in the back and so on. So it speeds up those and make it more accurate. And then what I really enjoy is that we can display it back to the audience or back to the participants in the meeting in real time, so it can feed into the continuous discussion. So instead of being something that's tallied up and maybe added to a report weeks later, and then maybe followed up on, you can look at, okay, this is the way we rank the important issues for our organizations, and we can see it right away, and we can start talking about them right away.
Right. The event that you folks did last week Sunday, when I watched it, and just so you folks know, you can see the graphic move based on how the audience is voting. All you see is a percentage, and just based on their answers and the sections that you give them. It was very fascinating for me to watch, and as somebody that sometimes is on stage or in front of a camera, that's some real-time, personal growth, immediate personal growth feedback that you folks are providing. What has been the response from local businesses and leaders?
So I think generally very positive. I think we've had one person who said that I don't want to know what my employees have to say. I just want to tell them what to do. But I think in general leaders want to hear what their employees are saying. They are on the battlefield. They're talking with the customers. They are out there gathering information, and oftentimes you'll see that leadership in companies are are sort of a little bit disassociated from that real-time information, and we kind of not allow, but we facilitate them gathering information and being able to implement it faster.
I know that you touched upon what your genesis was, and did you want to add to that? Is that the same love story that you have, that the way
Sure.
LiveSift
So for me, it's like I worked in different organizations, and I've been part of meetings, some good, a lot very bad. And I think there are certain inherent problems in meetings that we still today aren't solving. So what we are trying to do with our software is basically look at all the pain points in meetings and solve them, and help facilitate good, effective, and efficient meetings where people come in, they prepare, they can get going, they can work, and everybody can contribute at the same time. We sort of democratize the conversation, as it were. And so our goal is basically to solve some of the bigger problems that has been going on in meetings for centuries, really.
For the audience, I mentioned that LiveSift is a love story, because for those of you that don't know out there, Alex and Viil are actually a husband and wife team. And let's talk about that a little bit, because I know that there are, I have some mentors that have advised me not to, work with family members, and especially not my spouse. And at the same time, in my experience, it's been wonderful, and so, how has that been for you folks?
I think it's, as long as we separate professional life from personal life, it works. I think one of the biggest advantages is that doing a startup, you work all the time. So, you work 15, 16 plus hour days. It means that we actually do see each other. And I think that would be rocky if one of us was doing a startup and the other one was just having a regular job, as it were, because there's a lot of attention on the startup. So, but it works out.
Yeah, I think I also want to add in, like, when you do a startup, it's a lot of, a good thing is to have partners. It's really hard to build a company all by yourself, so you have to have partners, and you have to trust them. And we have a long history.
Yeah, who else not to trust except your spouse, right?
Exactly. So in some ways, having a startup partner, somebody you're sharing, your economics with, pretty much a lot of your time, your dreams, and your aspiration, you have to be in tune on what you want to do and so on. It's kind of like a marriage in itself. So we already got a working marriage, and we're, applying that to a startup, rather than, say, me find another partner and then kind of develop that kind of a relationship as I'm building a business with that person. I think you could be more challenging in some setting.
I think that's where the trend came from, when people talk about, this is my work husband or my work wife,
right?
Because you spend so much time there that you have to, like, when you collaborate elsewhere, you have to build a relationship that's almost just like any other relationship. It has to be a close relationship, like a marriage.
You actually see this in through Blue Startups. They have quite a few teams that are husband-wife teams, and I don't know if the selection is pretty shallow, but the teams that really stayed for a long time in the office was the husband and wife teams. I don't know how valid that data is, but
well, I think there's something else to be said. I mean, we also have couples who are married who might not be working together, but they're in the same field, and so they understand each other's, work challenges, and they can discuss work issues with each other because they have the same understanding. So I think you have the whole spectrum, from somebody who actually works together and see each other a lot and are in the same field, to people who go all the way on the other side and do something completely different and don't really share that work life part of themselves, and then share their private side. And I think different folks, different strokes, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like what works, and if it works, then for you folks, then fantastic. And for me, it's been working too. For others, and it doesn't work, that's great too. It's like the whole thing is like getting you to your goals, right? And what are your dreams in that? I want to touch upon too a couple of other things, like from LiveSift. What other problems, like, so better meetings. I kind of chuckled and I smiled, and everyone that knows me knows I despise meetings.
Can I ask you why?
Sure.
Why do you despise meetings?
Because a lot of times either no decisions are made, or the decisions could have been made via email. We didn't have to, like, convene. I also get, though, that people need to have this human connection. Except not 2 hours of discussing things.
Right,
So that's where my challenge is.
There's quite a lot of research on meetings and problems in meetings, and we're trying to point at them. Like, I think one of the sort of the common threads that we've seen is that people might be really good at their job. They might be experts in what they're doing, but nobody really taught them how to do a meeting well. And that part is something that people actually do need help with. And so we'll facilitate that process.
Mm-hmm. So LiveSift is solving, to me, a huge problem. Before, I think the issue was, how do we have meetings virtually, right? You know, and then even then, those meetings turned into like drawn out. Okay, somebody make a decision at the table, please. And now it's here are the questions. Put your input in. You know, state your input. Bam, there's a decision, and then you have consensus, right? Because it becomes almost like a democracy, right?
Right.
So let me ask you this: like in the future, could LiveSift be used for voting?
That would be great, definitely. It's not, you know, it's probably not right around the corner in this election.
Yes.
But yeah, it would be great, and I think it could be used for voting at several levels, because we do have a lot of voting happening in committees.
Yes.
And, you know, on local level as well as national level. And, you know, to take some of the personal issues off the table and be able to, not only for the decision making, but maybe for a pre-poll to understand where everybody is standing. You know, so if you kind of get a snapshot of where you're standing at before you start the discussion, so you see maybe some of the alternatives are totally off the table already at the beginning, and then you can spend your time more wisely on the issues that actually are on people's minds.
Right. Instead of talking about the 10 items that we have, oh really, we only need to focus on 3, and that'll save us some time. Now that we're focused, and that nobody had to like speak up, they could actually just use their phone and actually vote on that.
And yeah, and you can still have the discussion. You can have a very rich discussion, because now you know where the starting point of discussion is, right? And that your task is to win over those 10% that are in the other camp or whatever, because they might not be strong votes for the other camp. Another side of it is, and one of the huge problems with meetings that we're trying to solve, is that person who always dominates the conversation and seem to be the only opinion in the room, and others, you know, might not get the opportunity to speak up. They might be scared of speaking up. They might just be tired of trying to speak up with this person always talking, and being able to get an equal kind of sounding board, equal opportunity to input your opinion, so everybody can see that there's actually a diverse opinion in this room and not just that one voice and that's representing everything, is valuable to everybody. There's also research that shows that some of these people that do speak up, sometimes they do it because they think they're speaking on behalf of the majority, because they feel that way, so they think that everybody else should feel that way. So just for them to see that they might not be the majority is one of the things that might kind of like tone that down a little bit.
Right, and so what I'm hearing, and so one, what I'm hearing is myself, right? If I'm going to be honest.
I'm guilty too.
Two, what I'm hearing is the data is, of course, the person has to choose. However, huge shift in human behavior. You know, I'm not speaking for everyone, and get that real-time data right away. No, you're not. Oh, I should just sit down and allow someone else. Okay, right. So it still has to be choice, except I can just see immediate personal growth, as I was talking about before.
Yeah, I think one specific debate that we were at, they assumed there would be a very contentious issue. They considered bringing in police, and they asked us to sort of help facilitate Q&A from the audience. Their common thread in meetings before was that somebody would just start screaming. We actually showed questions coming in as they were coming in, and I think it moderated the conversation a little bit, making sure that, you know, the major set of people in that room actually didn't have extreme opinions, and it sort of facilitated the more extreme opinions to be a little bit more quiet, because they didn't get as much space as they're used to, because they speak loudest. And so that's one thing that I think our software is really good at.
That's very fascinating. If we want to find out what forum that was, we can ask Alex on Twitter. We're going to head to a commercial right now. When we get back, what we're going to talk about is what the future of real-time data and where we're going with it, what are the benefits and the drawbacks. We'll be right back. Aloha.
I'm Jay Fidel. That's Sharon Moriwaki of the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. And every Wednesday we have Hawaii, the state of clean energy. We've been doing it for some time now, and we have some fantastic guests on there, unbelievable guests who give us insight into what is going on in a very complex, sometimes very confusing, sometimes very disappointing area of progress in the state. So we love doing this. We love meeting them. We love talking to them. We love having their ideas out on the table. So maybe, just maybe, we can all make some sense of what's going on. Sharon, what do you think?
I think that's absolutely correct. We enjoy ourselves meeting with all these people and hearing about the energy and the state of clean energy, and hopefully we advance clean energy for the state. So it's terrific. Join us.
Okay, it's every Wednesday. Okay, Wednesday is Energy Day. Every Wednesday, 4 to 5 p.m. Hawaii, the state of clean energy, here on ThinkTech Hawaii. We'll see you there.
Aloha and welcome back to Reaching Out. I am Neez Faleafine. I'm here with Alex and Viil. And we're going to be talking about now the future of real-time data and just what are some of the benefits and drawbacks when it comes to communication. And just listening to you, Alex, before we went on the break, and just the data that you're receiving, one of the things I thought of that would be, it's very powerful, is in design thinking, when you're using it to gain empathy, right? Oftentimes people are not going to speak up and give their true feelings because they still want to be part of the team, and they don't want to rock the boat. Culturally, we just don't do that in Hawaii. And so gaining empathy is a huge tool that I can see, and for anybody that's using design thinking in their businesses and organizations. One thing I want to say is, like, where do you folks see the future of it? Like, how is it going to change the world to you folks, this real-time, immediate data?
I think doing business intelligence, help businesses internally gather data, I think that's a huge both market and a huge opportunity. There's a lot of wasted time in meetings in the US in general and the world. I think that is one opportunity. We're talking a little bit about real-time data. I think that helps facilitate a process where you can make decisions faster. And these days, when we build more agile businesses, being able to make decisions fast and then act on them is a big thing. It could basically mean life or death for a business. I think the next step would be forecasting, not only real-time data, but what happens next. Creating systems that could take data in real time and then start forecasting, build models, and then forecast what's coming out, which is basically what I did for my dissertation work. So it's really exciting.
It's exciting for me too. I mean, when you want to forecast, you can really see where communities are heading, and I can see just huge benefit for building a better government, using this tool to gain feedback from the workers who either have already given up, lost hope in anything, or they just haven't been heard. Well, here's a way for you to be heard.
Yep.
And use the data to actually make some kind of shift.
Yeah. And it emphasized how it's the people who are at the forefront of things. Like in a sales organization, it's their sales staff. In the service organization, it's the people who are dealing with the customers, or whatever, the people at the floor who really knows how well the business is doing, because they're getting the feedback constantly as a part of their job. What's great, what's not so great, what are out there of alternatives, and what are the hugest issues that needs to be solved in their particular market or population. And that kind of information has, they've tried to get it via surveys, and we've talked about earlier, survey response rate is not that awesome. But also, if you do a survey, often it takes weeks before that's all kind of like crunched together and come up to decision makers. So in the ability of doing that live, have it unfiltered, come up and float up to the top of the organization, so they can use the ears and eyes that they actually already have, and they're paying for having, and those ears and eyes also feel that they're actually being heard, is a huge advantage for both parties, as well as making the whole organization more flexible and more agile.
Right, and then just being able to see as a participant and as an organizer the data right there. Everybody just saw what the results were. Right, there's no getting away from it. Right.
It was interesting. We were doing this ranking exercise, and it was maybe 50 to 70 participants, and one guy comes over. He's like, I was waiting with my ranking just to see that the graphs were moving when I actually clicked the button, because it made him feel powerful, right? Like, I'm influencing this.
Yes.
And so it really made him feel like he was participating in something.
Right, and so with LiveSift.com, the power, right, or the empowerment goes to both, is shared by both the organizer and the participant. You know, that's a huge, huge difference in using your tool versus here's a piece of paper, please fill it out before you leave.
Yeah.
You know, or please fill out the survey, we'll send the whole team an email.
Right.
You know.
We also generate reports immediately, so you could actually take the reports immediately and use that information. So instead of waiting for somebody to generate reports, maybe a few weeks down the line, come
Yes.
back with an Excel sheet and the graph. You know, right as you're done with the meeting, you click done, and we generate the reports for you, and it's good to go.
Right, and that's what people need to have, right? Otherwise, what happens is life gets busy again, right? Right after that meeting, right after that conference, or the forum, life gets busy again, and it gets pushed on the side 6 months later, and that's where you lose hope from your participants, right? From your audience, right? Where instead, here's the data, here's the report right after you're done, and let's send it to everyone, and then from there we can move forward, right? Let's talk about the benefits and drawbacks, because with leadership development. Right, we talked about, you folks did, you've used it for forums, gubernatorial forum, you also use it with some candidates, and you've seen a shift, you know, how powerful is that, right, the real-time data to shift an actual leader?
Well, personally, I'm drawing on my background I used to teach organizational communication at UH, and there I would take my students to the different kind of leadership methodologies and strategies through history. So you have the classic leadership of your Fordism, where you have the man at the top and commands trickling down in the organization, and there's nothing coming back the other way, or they're not willing to listen.
Wonderful.
Yes, that's worked out wonderful. But it's still alive in parts of your organizations and businesses. However, I personally don't believe in that approach. And then you have the newer, more agile organizations where there's more collaborations, maybe a somewhat flatter structure. There's a network of communication that's whether you want it or not, because your employees can express their opinions. If they don't get to express their opinions within the organization, they can do it on their social media channels or get it out there. So you might as well, if not for any other reasons, provide those channels in your organization so you actually listen to people and you can take advantage of it before it's out there and somebody else comes from the outside and tells you about it. Right? So it takes a different kind of leader. It takes somebody who dare to have those open channels, who are not afraid of criticism, because ultimately criticism points out weaknesses that you can improve. So it points out ways that you can be better, your organization can be better, which is something a leader actually should be grateful for. Because if you're in an organization where you never get to hear anything about weaknesses and everything is like, oh, it's great, oh, big leader, you're not doing it right. You're really not doing it right.
And we're talking about, that's the difference between a long-term successful leader, the one that gets the feedback, makes the adjustments, the shifts, and the moment, for the moment kind of leader who just kind of, you know, no feedback for me, please. And hopefully that one business owner that you did speak to, hopefully they have a shift, and you've planted a seed, right, that, and oftentimes we hear, right, in order to innovate or die, or your business will die, and the innovation oftentimes lies in the frontline employees that you're not talking to. They have the answer. You know, why not ask them the questions, right? You touched upon business intelligence, and what I want to ask with LiveSift.com, do you folks have any plans to be open source at any time, or allow plugged in? And I might be asking for my own personal reasons.
So not open source. We'll probably provide an API so you can build out your own apps. I mean, this is down the road, but right now we're a for-profit company, and that works with our business model right now. But you know, nobody knows what the future will have, right?
Right. And speaking of the future, I know that you folks were in the Blue Startups cohort. And where are you folks now? In another?
Yes, we are part of Accelerate UH, the new accelerator from UH. That since I guess they look at us as seedlings from UH, and you know we've been working at the university for quite a long time, and you know you see a lot of good ideas there, but academics are not necessarily great business people, and I think that program basically tries to sort of help facilitate growing ideas into businesses. And so when we heard about it and we started talking to them and talking to the consultants about joining, it was really inspiring to us. And so It was a definite yes from us. So
Definite yes. Yeah, and so now that we've talked about all the businesses stuff, what I wanted to just kind of touch upon is you folks moved here in Hawaii, you know, finished your doctorates here, and then started a business. You know, there's this discussion over, you know, Hawaii's not the greatest place to start a business, yet you folks remained. You know, what keeps you here on the island? Besides, you know,
I mean,
sun, surf, and
keep
sand,
on-
and it's not
I was just gonna
Norwegian,
say,
right?
it's a little bit warmer than Norway, and there's
we're climate refugees.
Well, I think we believe in the idea of, since technology and communication and information technology is our fields, we believe in the fact that that's something you can do anywhere, and why not here? As well as there's a strong movement, and some of these accelerated that we've been part of is part of that movement to support growing some different kind of businesses here in Hawaii. We're too much dependent on tourism and some of the income that we get via the military here, and so these efforts are towards growing some other legs to stand on for the Hawaii economy, and we think, you know, there's no reason why you shouldn't have a successful technology business in Hawaii as long as we have good connections and the tools available.
Right, it comes back to the relationships, and I'm a proponent for technology in Hawaii and building that industry in all sectors, and so yes, you know, why not? Yes, we have tourism, we have our military, and, you know, the third.
Yeah. Well, I think there are a lot of really good initiatives coming out. I mean, Blue Startups is part of a part government initiative. Accelerate UH is something that grew out of UH's need to grow ideas into businesses. So there's a lot of things going on at the same time, and I really do think that we're at a starting point of some a movement in technology growth in Hawaii.
I agree with you. There's been, you know, a lot of people that have planted a lot of seeds over, you know, the last couple of decades, really, when it comes to the technology industry. And for me, you know, I find myself as like a young kid on the block. You know, I'm at the right place at the right time because, you know, this is a great moment for all of us. And so when it comes to LiveSift, you know, what's next for you folks? You're at Accelerate UH, and then...
right now we're looking to get funding. So we're looking for investors. We have conversations going. It's a time-consuming venture, I think. But our idea is basically to grow a world-class technology business in Hawaii. That's what we want to do. And I think, so we grow the business, we start selling the product, we get investors, and then we conquer the world, I think.
Yes, exactly. Isn't that everyone's dream?
Yeah.
Yep, so it's going to go Google, Apple, LiveSift,
Yeah.
right? It's gonna, right? Conquer the world, and then Neez, right? Right behind you folks. And it's true. I mean, in order for any of our startups to grow, right, we constantly need to wear different hats. And we're going to be wrapping up in a couple minutes. Let's talk about that, because I have that challenge too, where you know, I'm the product of my business. You folks are the product. Yet you have to be the fundraiser, right? Financial manager, the marketer, right? You know, you have to come to these interviews. Talk a little bit about that, and then we'll wrap up. You know, just constantly changing hats. That
Well, I think, you know, it's something everybody in the startup, everybody starting any kind of business, is not only for technology. It's something you have to do. You start up with a small team and a little budget, if any, and you have to be able to swap these hats and keep all your balls in the air as you're juggling them, and so on. The idea behind, you know, creating a successful business is to be able to replace, you know, put those hats on other people.
Yes.
You know, grow your team. So find somebody who's better than you at either of these tasks, and convince them that they should join you in your endeavor, whether, you know, whether they want to have a share as a partnership, or whether you have a revenue where you could pay them for it or whatever, and get rid of those hats, literally. And then eventually end up maybe with a hat you're mastering the best, or if worse comes to worse, you might even replace yourself completely as a business. If you realize if that kind of quality talent comes by, and you realize, wow, she would do that much better than me, and
I've made it.
I'm smart if I hire her to do that instead of me, because I'm not that good. So that's pretty much where we're at. We have a lot of hats. We're looking to give them away, but you know, we also have to find people who are as you know, eager and gung-ho about our idea and our business, and who we can have a great, maybe not a marriage with, but work relationship with. And lucky enough, we've started finding people like that. So we are growing our team with some really, really nice additions, great experience, and great talent. So we're excited about that.
That's the understatement of the year. These are world-class people, actually. So it's very exciting for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Go ahead.
can I
keep going? Yes,
a couple
of
of seconds?
Yes.
So one of the advantages of building a startup as young as, in the very beginning process as us here and in technology is that Hawaii does have a lot of very experienced technologists who maybe been successful in the mainland or even globally, and they choose to retire in Hawaii. But these are busy minds. They don't retire easily, but they're here, right? So a lot of them are
40 years,
right? So a lot of them are volunteering their time and their expertise to guide young companies like us via these accelerator programs or as advisors, and we've been really lucky to have that available here in Hawaii.
Okay, so I just want to thank both of you for reaching out. I wish LiveSift all the best. I can see that it is a tool that's going to change the world, change communities and human behaviors. Thank you all very much for joining us. Please tune in next week for another show. Aloha.